Hurricane Fiona is getting better organized and headed for Puerto Rico. Hi everybody, I'm Mike Nasel with this noontime 1 o'clock video update on the latest on Hurricane Fiona, the third hurricane of the 2022 Atlantic hurricane season. And looking at the whole Atlantic, there it is. Look at it getting better organized. You can start to see the eye on that visible satellite. And we are going to be dealing with a very devastating potential for flooding and heavy rain in areas of Puerto Rico and the Dominican Republic. Here's the latest on Hurricane Fiona as of 11 a.m. Eastern Time. We're going to be getting updates every 3 hours now because we have watches and warnings out. But if things progress faster than we're seeing, we may have superseded advisories ahead of time. Nevertheless, Fiona's at 17.3, 66.5 west, winds of 80 miles per hour, so it's a solid Category 1 hurricane. And even though it's going to be interacting with land, we could continue to see intensification as it takes that track right through areas of Puerto Rico, maybe making landfall, maybe just skirting the coast. The Mona Passage, the Puerto Rican Trench up here, some of the deepest water in the world, up to 5 miles deep there, and a lot of hot oceanic heat potential. And then the Dominican Republic as a stronger hurricane, and eventually a major hurricane, the first major hurricane we're thinking of this season as it moves on up between the East Coast and Bermuda, although if you're in Bermuda, you need to watch it very carefully. I did want to go over the pressure, 987 millibars. The aircraft been flying out there, and we haven't seen any change to that yet. It's still getting its structure together, but that is a solid Category 1 pressure moving west-northwest at 8. And that slow motion, if it was moving 15, 20, get it out of here. Don't have that heavy rain, but that slow motion could really make the rainfall pretty bad. We do have hurricane warnings in effect. I'm going to read them off here. For Puerto Rico, that includes Vieques and Culebra, and we also have it for the north coast of the Dominican Republic, and we now have a tropical storm watch for the Turks and Caicos Islands and the southeastern Bahamas, with the expectation that this system's going to get very close as a hurricane, and you could get in that wind field. So again, this is a very dangerous situation when it comes to heavy rain. There's the satellite imagery, and boy, do we have an organizing hurricane on our hands. It's got that classic shape. It's starting to show the I-type feature. Still ragged, but I mean, compared to what it was a few days ago as a sheer tropical storm, this thing is really impressive right now, and that is not good news for Puerto Rico and the Dominican Republic. It doesn't have to be a strong system to cause devastating rains. I remember back in 2004, Hurricane Jeanne killed 3,000 people in areas of the Dominican Republic with devastating flooding, and that was a Category 1 hurricane, and that was a tropical storm over Puerto Rico. Here's the radar, and boy, this looks foreboding, doesn't it? Look at this solid northern eye wall that's building. It's still open on the south side and a little bit on the east and the west. It's having some struggle mixing out dry air, but that is a solid eye wall that's building, and that means we could have very intense hurricane force winds, and that will be even stronger winds in the higher elevations of Puerto Rico. So if the winds make landfall at, let's say, 85 miles an hour, you could have gusts 105, 120 in the higher elevations, so maybe 1 or 2 categories of strength higher. And when we look at the Saffir-Simpson hurricane scale, you can see a Category 1 hurricane is a minimal hurricane, but that does not mean that we're going to have minimal damage, especially when it comes to the rainfall. 1996, Hurricane Hortense. This is kind of a forgotten hurricane. The name was retired in 97, and on the 96 list, which is reused every 6 years, it became Hannah. Remember 2 years ago, Hurricane Hannah hit Texas? Well, that name was Hortense originally, but Hurricane Hortense is a very good storm to compare to Hurricane Fiona. Very similar track, very similar time of year. Back in September of 96, it became a Category 1, and it made a very close impact landfall on Puerto Rico, and then right through the Mona Passage, and then it became a Category 4 as it moved on out. But the devastating impact from Hortense, the flooding, it was horrendous, and it killed many people and caused a lot of problems in Puerto Rico, and that is why we had that name retired from the list. So this storm is a lot like Hortense. If you're in Puerto Rico, este sistema tiene la misma trayectoria de Hortensia. Okay? What I'm basically trying to say is, if this is a lot like Hortense, and you can remember the flooding from 25, 26 years ago, get to higher ground if you are in the lower elevations, because it could be really, really bad news. Here's the rainfall, again, 20 inches in some areas, especially along the south coast. So even if this thing doesn't make a direct landfall on Ponce, you could have heavy, heavy rainfall, and on those higher elevations, the threats of mudslides, flooding, very, very dangerous situation. So again, this is the radar, and I'm not liking what I'm seeing, so the wind is going to be an impact, especially if this eye wall gets better organized, but right now the main threat is the heavy, heavy rainfall. Wind shear still not that favorable over the top of it, but it's strengthening in spite of that because it's the heart of hurricane season and it's over those warm Caribbean waters and nothing's stopping her now. So I'm Mike Nasel with the latest on Hurricane Fiona, and we're going to be back with continuous coverage as this hurricane heads for landfall in Puerto Rico later on today. Batten down the hatches. This is going to be a nasty strike for the island of Puerto Rico.